the question for this lecture is, how do plants capture the sun's energy? So this is a bit of an overview of the process of photosynthesis. Now, what exactly is photosynthesis? Well, it's a process that happens in plants and other organisms like algae, where they take a couple things and use the sun's energy to turn them into new things. Can you remember what those are? So the definition from Wikipedia is, photosynthesis is a process used by plants and other organisms to convert light energy into chemical energy that can later be released to fuel the organism's activities. So first, what is light energy? Well, that's the energy that's coming to us from the sun. So the energy from the sun lights up our day and keeps our earth nice and warm. So what is chemical energy? Well, that's the energy that's stored in the bonds of chemical compounds. So anytime you have a bond between two atoms that makes up a chemical compound, those bonds have an energy stored in them. And so plants can use photosynthesis to turn the sun's energy into chemical energy in food. So the process of photosynthesis takes these reactants, carbon dioxide, remember, and water. And then using the sun's energy, they make glucose or sugar and oxygen gas that we breathe. So this is the chemical equation for photosynthesis in words. But let's put it in chemical symbols so we can be cool like scientists. So this is the symbol for carbon dioxide, CO2. That means there's one carbon atom bonded to two oxygen atoms. And we have 6 of these all together. That's why there's a 6 out in front. So that tells us we have 6 molecules of carbon dioxide. Now we also have to add water, H2O. That means there are 2 atoms of hydrogen and just 1 atom of oxygen bonded together to make this molecule of water. And we have 6 of those molecules of water. Now the reason we have to have 6 of these and 6 of these, because when we make glucose is a big molecule and it has 6 carbon atoms, 12 hydrogen atoms, and 6 oxygen atoms. So this is all in one molecule. So since we need all of these things, that's why we have to have 6 waters and 6 carbon dioxides to get everything we need to build this. And then after the plant puts that sun's energy into making glucose, which is a really high energy molecule, right? If you eat a lot of glucose, a lot of sugar, you get kind of hyper because it's got a lot of energy in it. And that energy goes into your body when you eat it. So this is where the sun's energy went, into this molecule. And then we're left over with a few oxygens that kind of float off as gas in the atmosphere. So O2, meaning there's 2 oxygen atoms bonded together to make one molecule of oxygen gas, and we'll end up with 6 of those. And this is the waste product of photosynthesis, which is kind of silly to think of oxygen as waste because we humans and animals and all the other organisms that like to breathe, we have to use that. Now, pop question, in which part of a plant does photosynthesis occur? Is it the leaves, the branches, or the roots? Well, if you said leaves, you're right. And the trick to knowing which part of a plant is doing photosynthesis is looking at the color. Basically, any part of a plant that is green, there's photosynthesis going on in that part of the plant. Well, that's important to remember. Green is basically photosynthesis. So what's going on with these plants? These are corn plants, and I actually worked with these plants when I went to University of Oregon. My job was to plant corn in the greenhouse, and they were looking for plants that came up white. And these are white because they can't do photosynthesis. They don't have what it takes. So this kind of shows you the green is really important for photosynthesis. And a plant that can't do photosynthesis, that's white like this, isn't going to grow, and it's not going to thrive. So these plants would only get about this big, and then they would kind of shrivel up and die. They can get this big because there's energy in the seed. But once they use up that seed energy, they can't make any more sugar. They can't grow. Now, photosynthesis takes place inside an organelle called the chloroplast. Hopefully you remember that from our cell unit. The chloroplast looks like this. And it doesn't live inside animal cells, right? We can't do photosynthesis. But this little guy is inside of plant cells. And this is where all of the reactions of photosynthesis take place. Now you'll notice the color of this guy, it's green. And we're about to find out why that is. But first let's take a step back and say, well, what makes things colored in the first place? So things that are colored have molecules called pigments. A pigment is a light-absorbing molecule. That means it absorbs light, but not all of light. So hopefully you guys remember that white light is actually a mixture of all the different colors of the rainbow, right? Roy G. Biv, red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, violet. Those are all in this white light that's coming from the sun. If it goes through a prism, the prism will split the wavelengths of light. Wavelength is kind of this. See how these are coming out in waves? And red has longer waves than the violet. So there's a whole spectrum of wavelengths in light. And when it goes through a prism, or when it goes through the water up in rain clouds, right, making a rainbow, these wavelengths get split depending on how long they are, so we can kind of see them as distinct bands of color. What's cool about a pigment is that they absorb some of these wavelengths, some of the colors, but not all of them. So imagine you're wearing a red shirt. The pigments in that shirt are absorbing some of the colors from the light, but it's reflecting the red pigment. So the blue and the green and the other wavelengths of light are getting absorbed by that red pigment. So all we see is that red pigment that's not absorbed, that's reflected. So the colors that we see are the ones that are reflected from a surface. They're not absorbed. The colors that we don't see get absorbed by the surface. So if you had a green shirt on, which colors would be absorbed by that pigment? It'd be blue and red. Green is not absorbed. Green's reflected, so we can see it. Same with blue. Which two colors are absorbed by the blue? It would be green and red. They're getting absorbed by that pigment, so we don't see them anymore. What we see is the blue that's not absorbed. It's reflected. White is all of the colors, and then black absorbs all the wavelengths of light, all the colors. It doesn't reflect any, so we can't see anything. Now, the pigment that is in a plant that makes it green is called chlorophyll. This is how plants capture the energy of the sun. It's with this chlorophyll pigment. So it absorbs blue, indigo, violet, red, and orange wavelengths of light. Does not absorb yellow or green light. It reflects those, and so that's what we see. we see the green and yellow, and that's why plants look green to us. Here's an absorption spectrum graph showing there's different types of chlorophyll. So different plants will have different amounts of these, chlorophyll A and chlorophyll B. So these both absorb a lot of light that's blue and indigo and violet, and then they don't absorb the green and yellow light, but then they absorb down here again in the orange and red wavelengths of light. So this one that says carotenoids, that's going to make the yellow, orange, and red pigments that we see like in a carrot or in leaves in the fall. But the chlorophyll that's used for photosynthesis are the ones that we're interested in right now that absorb here and here, but not there. So this is why plants are green. It's all thanks to chlorophyll, which is a little molecule called a pigment that absorbs light energy. And then it's going to pass on that light energy and use it to make glucose. So since plants need that glucose to grow big and strong, which color of light is going to be best for the plants to grow in? So your next job, after you finish filling out your note guide, is to go onto Canvas and find the Light and Plant Growth Virtual Lab. You're going to need this lab worksheet. And the front page of the worksheet asks you to predict or make a hypothesis about the color of light that will cause the most plant growth.